few weeks ago, I led a meeting for a virtual team, and afterward, about 20% of the team emailed me and said, "Oh my gosh, I wish I could see a picture of your floor." And in that story lies a really important technique on how to create an agenda for a virtual team meeting. In this video, I'm gonna unpack that technique that I think you'll really love, find brilliant, and the people in your meetings, whether it's a small group gathering or large group, will find that meeting immediately more interesting and engaging and memorable. And then I'll also share one in case, for those of you who have too much to do and too little time, I'll share a second technique that I really, really love to set a live set an agenda for a virtual team that takes you 0 minutes, 0 seconds of prep time and allows you to do right on the fly in the moment. So after watching this video, your team meetings should go from this to this. Let's get into it. So first method, going back to that group that I facilitated a session for, and 20% of them emailed me afterward and said, "Hey, I wish that I could have seen a picture of your floor." And the reason they were curious about that was I set my agendas oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes, if I want it to be, that agenda to be more engaging, interesting, especially if I'm presenting things, I set an analog agenda for a virtual team meeting. And what I mean by that, and what I told the group was that this is the number of PowerPoint slides that I'd be using in that meeting with them today. And instead, I have my agenda laid out on the floor. And so I did from here all the way over to here. I had stuff laid out on the floor, and I knew that the meeting was going to take place in that order. So when we finished object number 1, we moved to object number 2. There's a whole framework that I designed that within that we're not going to go super deeply into today. You can check out one of my other videos on 5 ingredients for engaging meetings or engaging virtual meetings, and that unpacks kind of the theory or the mindset behind how I'm designing unofficial starts and really intentional beginnings, along with this idea of connection before content, making content a little bit more visual and engaging, and then making a closing very deliberate. So I'm embedding those 5 ingredients into the agenda that I have laid out on the floor. For this video, I just have a little mini sample agenda laid out on my desk that I'll show you. And so right in the beginning, I might have a quote. And I might hold up this quote as an unofficial start as people log on. I might just invite people to either unmute or type in the chat what this quote makes them think about. Unofficial start, just to get things rolling, spark some immediate engagement rather than the obligatory small talk of like, how was your weekend? What's up? What's new? Like these questions that don't really energize a meeting in any way. So I want to start with something different, but very purposeful. So I just picked that quote randomly off the top. You could choose a quote that might fit the purpose of your meeting, and that would be even better. The second thing that I have laid out here to make an intention really clear might be these 2 emojis. So I might say my intention by the end of this meeting is if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed and exhausted and unclear in what you're doing this week or this month, or you need some clarity, my hope is that you leave feeling like, I got it, I'm good to go, I feel clear on what's happening. So do you see how when I hold up these visual elements just to your webcam, something in people's brains goes off, right? Most agendas are just an 8.5 by 11 document or a screen shared PowerPoint slide with here's where we're gonna go through. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. And yet the brain loves visual data. And when we're on virtual meeting after virtual meeting after virtual meeting, it's really useful to mix it up with something interesting. One of my favorite books by Chip and Dan Heath called Made to Stick talk about the value of creating curiosity gaps. So one of the reasons I think so many people emailed me after and said, I wish I could have seen a picture of your floor and this whole agenda that you had laid out is because there's a curiosity gap, right? Like you can see all this context in my lens, but just out of frame, there's all these visual elements that actually are gonna guide us to where we're going. Now, I gave the group a big picture snapshot of where we're going, but in the mini elements, every few minutes I was holding up a new object, and in our brains, and in the brains of everybody that was participating, it was sort of like a slot machine effect. It was like, that same psychology that happens, the variable reward it's called in psychology, where you pull that slot machine and you could always win. On a teeny mini scale, that is what holding up visual agenda actually does, because it says, ooh, what's he going to hold up next, right? So if I'm going to say, here's our intention, and then state what I'd love to do right now is start off with a listening exercise by listening to you rather than me just talking at you. And as I say that, I might just hold up an ear. And when I do that, there's something really interesting that happens in people's brain that says, ooh, I'm awake, I'm interested, and all of a sudden this feels a little bit more real and purposeful because there's this agenda laid out. Now I recognize that if you've made it to this point in the video, you're at least curious. But I recognize that this is a very unconventional way to set an agenda. And it's also not practical to do all the time, right? You don't need to be going on a scavenger hunt around your house or your office and grabbing objects that fit your agenda for every single meeting. For a bigger meeting or one that you really want to engage people in or one that you really want to be memorable, it might be a worthwhile technique. Now, the second technique I promised I was going to share with you is a really great tool to be able to live set an agenda with absolutely zero preparation. The name for it that was given to me by a client I was working with is called the Super Chat. And very simply, the Super Chat is on any virtual platform that you're meeting on, you've got the chat feature. Super Chat is just, you have everybody type something in, but you have them hold it. And then all on the count of 3, you have them hit enter, and then all of those chats go through all at the same time. In a really big group, if I'm doing a virtual keynote or something, presenting to 300 people, I frame it as if I want everybody to type something into the chat and then press enter at the same time with the goal of breaking Zoom or whatever platform we're on in that moment, just for an element of fun. So that idea of a super chat, really phenomenal way to have a group live set an agenda and not favor the extroverts and not favor the leaders in the group. Just a really great way to get everybody's thoughts out. And so what I might do is give a prompt like, what do you need to accomplish by the end of this 60 minutes to feel like this time was well spent? Can you type that into the chat, but don't press enter? And what happens is when everybody types that in without favoring any one person's idea or what they want to accomplish, you get every outcome-focused intention out on the table right in the very beginning. And so you actually have everybody has a reference point, and that is basically the live set, the PowerPoint slide or the 8.5 by 11 that normally would have had the leader's agenda on it is now the group's agenda. There's so much more ownership over that meeting because you've asked people what they want to accomplish. Now here's the thing, if people cannot answer that prompt, what would you love to have happen by the end of this meeting or something like that? If they can't answer that prompt, they maybe shouldn't be in that meeting, right? Because as Priya Parker says, and I've said many times in my other videos, we've got to meet for purpose, not for time. So often we set a meeting for time, and whether there's an agenda or not, right? We're meeting for that set amount of time, as opposed to this is exactly what we want to accomplish, this is what we want to discuss, this is what we want to decide, this is what we want to actually do. Whatever it is, that needs to be laid on the table in the very beginning. And if you want to be a really great meeting facilitator, combine these two techniques, because you can use the analog prompts to kind of guide people through, but also find out what their intention is at the very beginning. It'll make a huge difference in your meetings. I hope that your time spent here saves you a mountain of time in connecting and engaging with your group. Hope you have better meeting agendas after watching this video. If you like this one, you'll like these two. Have an awesome day.